Hey, what is going on, everyone? This is Tanveer Syed, and welcome to the next video of this series. This specific series where I talk about my life as a visually impaired person, this time as a student of the George Washington University. Now, I actually remember the date that I believe I arrived at the United States. I believe it was August 5th or so. Or
Facebook page facing up.
excuse
Avery
me.
Howard posted an update.
Excuse me.
9:21 p.m.
Sorry about that. Yeah. This happened with improvised videos, but somewhere between August 5th and 6th is when I arrived here at the United States. Um, I remember it was, I believe, me and my mom. We got to Dulles International, and I believe uh, my brother sort of met us here, and from there it basically started. This how it usually starts. Stay in a hotel initially whilst you get things sorted. Go apartment hunting and whatnot. So the George Washington University campus, it's essentially around the Foggy Bottom metro station, the main one. You got a few other campuses here and there. You got, I believe, a building, a few floors of a building in Arlington, not Arlington, in Virginia. Yeah, I think it is Arlington. It's the Boston Metro. Yes, it's one of the parts of DC that's it's one of the parts that I've been to. It's more expensive than Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, if that is possible, more expensive than Pennsylvania Avenue. Yeah. So I used to live right next to the Foggy Bottom metro station, and I actually used to live next to a Whole Foods, and at that time I did not think at all that Whole Foods is a high end store. I thought Whole Foods is just a grocery store that does food. It's similar to the Lulu hypermarket or the Lulu department store, which you have the modern versions of it, which you have in Abu Dhabi. Okay, where in the front you have all the basic stuff, all your grocery items and whatnot, and in the back you have food. I thought it's similar to something like that, where essentially anyone can go visit it, or everyone goes visits it, even your blue collar workers and whatnot. After a while, I actually made a few friends over in DC. Well, I don't know where they are right now, but made a few friends, and it turns out Whole Foods is a bougie place. I'm like, really? I mean, okay, it's a bit more higher price than 7-Eleven, but 7-Eleven is.
Reminders. Cancel subscription to clicksportsnetwork.com. No.
Sorry about that. But yeah, 7-Eleven is like the very bottom of the barrel. So yeah, I mean, I was surrounded by Whole Foods. You had a TGI Fridays. You had all within walking distance, and let's say the TGI Fridays and the barbers. I didn't even have to cross a single road for that. The McDonald's was it was like a 15-minute walk. The Subway was more like the Subway restaurant was like a 10-minute walk. You had food carts, on campus next to an on-campus Starbucks, and as for grocery shopping, you also had 7-Eleven. It was maybe the 2 blocks behind the Whole Foods. And actually, once I realized that I can get my groceries for a lot cheaper than I get them at Whole Foods, I'm like, you know what, let's just go 7-Eleven. Okay, then on the campus, you had a decent sized gym, And okay, full conjecture. The best university gym I have seen is the University of Leeds in the UK. Hands down, the University of Leeds. I mean, you had the Canadian and I believe the British and maybe another countries Olympic teams train at this gym. So that gives you an idea of how high standards or what high standards this gym has to maintain to actually get approval for that. Anyways, um, it was all right. The hours are all right. The bit stuffy about the noise complaints. I'm like, this is not a library. And then again, you had gym attendants who like I've seen dumbbells way more than them. I'm like, the dumbbell is curling them instead of picking them up instead of them picking the dumbbell up. Like, I'm like, okay, I know we're all for diversity and whatnot, but there are still some physical standards. Like, because you have to be at least somewhat be able to function. Because like I've seen regulations for being a gym attendant. Yes, you have to have a minimum amount of strength. Who knows? Maybe they're just lean muscular. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe they do have the physical prowess because they did end up working there and obviously the university doesn't want a lawsuit on their hands. So maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe it's just me. Anyways, moving on. The I was located in a pretty convenient place. The disability center was right opposite my building. Like I could see it outside my window. Okay, even the bank was very close to me. So if I needed to withdraw money or anything, right there, all within walking distance. But yes, one, it was very expensive and understandably so because I was few blocks from the White House. Like I don't expect anything to be cheap. I did expect it to be expensive. Okay. Next. The first thing I've noticed is that the machines are different because moving from the UK to the US, I still had this impression that the UK is essentially the US with a British accent. And I sort of had some basic levels of expectations based on that. Oh yeah, like I said, we're right next to the metro, so yeah, the metro service was actually pretty good. I think I still have my metro rail card. Okay. The first thing I've noticed is that the machines are different. The machines that tell you when to cross the road is different. It actually has an arrow that it tells you in what direction to cross the road. So that is a bit of an upgrade. Next, it actually talks and tells you which road to cross. Okay, which can be a positive and a negative because the positive is yes, it tells you which road to cross. The negative is the volume is way too low, and generally, if you're standing next to a sign, you want to cross moving forward. You don't want to cross doing like 270 degrees around the sign and then or 180 degrees going behind the pole. You don't want to do that. Like you generally have a basic orientation because generally where the pavement meets the road, where the designated crossing areas are, you have those little transitions, those bumpy transitions, the slopey, bumpy transitions. So orientation is not an issue. Okay. But the problem was its implementation was not consistent. There are many times where many traffic signals where this sign was there and this sign was not there. So I had to, like, create a map with conceptual map within a conceptual map. As in, okay, this is the layout of my known area, and this is the route, this is the overlay of the routes where it is relatively safer for me to cross the road because I'm going to encounter more of those signals. One of the biggest areas you see these signals not being implemented are your back roads. And some of these back roads can actually get pretty long. Like they don't necessarily have traffic lights on them. So that was, like, the first thing I've noticed. Next, these are more cultural things. Next, I've noticed is that you have your big city issues. Excuse me.
To notification. Reminders. Yeah. Keep receiving reminders.
No.
Yes.
You have your big city issues where, like, generally people don't have that much time for you. Like, especially when you want to, like, stop somebody and, like, ask them a question or get some directions or something. Like, I had that problem once. Like, this is the first time I actually filed taxes. Okay, this is the first time I filed taxes in the United States. I filed taxes before, I paid council tax before when I was in the UK. The last 3 or 4 months, I actually paid council tax. But there, what happened is I went down to the Leeds City Council, and there I paid the tax. Over here, like, you had your W-2 form and, like, your different forms and whatnot. So the George Washington University, they were very forthcoming and helpful in terms of helping me with this process. Okay. Next, the metro system. I've used a train system before on my own. I've never used a metro system before, and it's a little different because the metro stations are mapped out differently to trains, like proper train stations. Let's say your Bradford interchange or your Leeds train station, Manchester, Piccadilly, Manchester, Victoria. So yeah, those are mapped out a little different. So yeah, I mean, once I got the hang of it, the farthest I've gone using the metro is actually into Maryland, because I actually got the red line from Metro Central and I went down to Cold Springs. And this is when I actually met one of these lighthouse companies. I actually went to their office and like, had a bit of a, tour around. And there's when I realized, like, these a lot of these assistive magnification devices, electronic magnification devices, these have been, no, they have been around for a while. Like, I've seen one where you have a small table and a TV mounted on top of it. So what you're supposed to do is, whatever your reading material, you're supposed to slide underneath the TV. The CCTV camera is lodged on the bottom side of the television, and these are your CRT televisions, the box TVs. So yeah, it was a bit of an assistive technology museum.
690-11. Your order is out for 9:34 p.m.
So I had, like, that was one of my experiences as well, like also navigating in the snow. Okay, when it came to shopping and in terms of getting assistance, for some reason I found, I won't say they were unreceptive, I would say they were a bit startled, as in, like, they've never had this experience before. They've, like, many of them never, it seems like they've rarely had this experience before helping out someone with a visual impairment. Most of the places, however, I will tell you, they were very accommodating. They were, like, they just said, okay, we'll just hold on, we'll find someone, and then that person will help you out. That is very reasonable. In fact, that is the most acceptable form of assistance that that you can get. I mean, I went to Best Buy, had no problems on my own. TGI Fridays, no problems. Even when I went to Gold's Gym, yes, at one point I was a member of Gold's Gym, no problems. McDonald's, no problems. Subway, oh my God, the people who worked in Subway were actually Bangladeshi, and they actually invited me for some extra food as well. So, thank you very much for that. That is really, really appreciated. Even the 7-Eleven next to my house, most of them were, were Bangladeshis too. So there was no problems over there. In fact, here's something weird. In the George Washington University, it's the first time I have ever encountered another student with a visual impairment in a gym. Because I believe this is an orientation. And this person was being chaperoned around, using the assistant. And I just got out of the one of the bathrooms, and I walked to my nearest door. Okay, and I bumped into some, generally what I expect is, since I'm generally not used to having other visually impaired people around me without my knowledge. I generally expect some people perhaps if they see me coming they'll just move out the way, and I bumped right into this person, and then I saw wait a minute, is that a blind cane? And then I said, okay, you know what, I'm gonna get out of the way. So the orientation continued, but unfortunately I've been in that gym almost every day of the week, but I've never seen him again. This is very odd. I kept an eye out for a blind cane, folded or extended. I never saw him again. I really hope he did not get discouraged from joining the gym, because if one of the things the visually impaired community needs to improve these horrible, appalling statistics is much more of a visual presence, so that other people can see hey, you know what, I'm seeing more and more visually impaired people do more things on their own. They need to see this. Okay, and speaking of which, here's another thing the University of Leeds did very well. They had equipment which had some assistance for people with visual impairments. Okay, one of their treadmills, and by the way, I might have to cut this video out for a little bit, because I just ordered some food and I got the notification that the food's on the way. So I might have to cut this video out, when I hear the knock on the door. So I'll come back and finish my thoughts whenever I cut it out. But one of the things I've noticed in the University of Leeds gyms is that they had a screen. It had a magnifying glass option. What the magnifying glass option did is that all the displays on the screen, it made it large enough to fit the entire screen, so that low vision runners can actually use that. This feature I have not seen in any other gym. And I've been to the University of Leeds, the University of Bradford. I've been to many gyms outside of just the university gyms. I've been to the Gold's Gym. I've not seen this. When I was there, I did not see it. It's not a knock on Gold's Gym. It's just I'm just describing my own experience. Okay, the George Washington University gym. Okay, the Florida Tech gym. Okay, just to answer this question, yes, they have a version of this. The display by default is large, so that's actually a good alternative. Instead of like having the option to make it small or large, just have the default display as large as default display, really big, so it's very easy to read. And like, for me, it's possible to read instead of being impossible to read. Yeah, for me, it's possible to read. Okay. And Florida Tech, I'll get to it later on, like in a couple of weeks, maybe, like maybe next year. I will get to Florida Tech because it's, yeah, like Florida Tech has. Let me put it this way: Florida Tech has done a lot for me. Okay, like I've mostly positive, like almost nothing but positive things to say. All right, just a moment. Right. Right. Sorry about that interruption. So yes, I'm mentioning like nothing but mostly positive things to say about Florida Tech. But that's for a later video. But as for the George Washington University, it took a little bit of getting used to, but mostly what I needed was accessible. Okay, now let's talk about the education. And this was still in my impression that the US is just a British version of the UK with an American accent. Okay. And I have experienced the UK for 5.5 years. Okay. And this is what I enrolled to be, essentially like, get my second master's, this emphasis on education and human development. And here's where I got introduced to educational psychology and developmental psychology. And let me tell you, this lit a fire under me. Because now any discussion about psychology, the functionality of information processing, perception, schema construction, okay, like short-term memory, long-term memory, and the most efficient ways of information reception and processing and whatnot, creation of understandings and whatnot. Anything in this realm, I smack it up like out of the ground. Like, smack the ball out of the ground. And through this, I realized something. Like, on an intellectual level, like, a lot of the understanding is stuck at one point, and it's been stuck for a while. Like, no one is actually, like, all the pieces are there, but very few people are trying to put the pieces together to create something more meaningful and more definitive. Something that resolves a lot of arguments. Okay. I also got to got to observe how a middle school is taught. A DC middle school is taught. Like, whatever that implies, just understand what I'm essentially trying to say. And I didn't mind it. I mean, to be honest, no, let me be very, very clear. To be honest, the classrooms I came from, where I was growing up, compared to that, what I saw is rather well behaved. Yes. Because like I said, I grew up in the 90s. We had a lot, 90s and early 2000s, we had a lot more intensity, lot more aggression, lot more, and these are in different ways. Many of them had a lot more drive. In fact, if you did not have these features, you would be the outcast. Like, you have to have, like the one thing you cannot be and get away with in the, in the school culture is docile. Like, your you'll have to show your hunger and your passion and, your expertise as much as you can in some field. You'll have to identify your niche or your niche, however you pronounce it. But anyways, so when it came to accessibility, the Disability Support Center, they actually really did as much as they could. Okay, I mean, yes, I still, I still thought accommodations. Okay, I thought accommodations was essentially your residence, and I wrote an email saying, like, okay, in my accommodations, I'll need some space to put a 39-inch TV. I'll need a large enough bathroom, and, I'll need a larger room more than usual to actually, move around and not bump into too many things. And, if I have any extra equipment, I have some room to place that as well. I got a reply saying, like, okay, yeah, good luck finding that residence. I had no idea that in at that point, I had no idea that accommodation means what adjustments are going to be made for you. So there was a bit of a culture shock. And one instance after another, culture shock after culture shock after culture shock. Okay, I've even realized even their teaching style is different. And eventually, like right now, okay, that's for another video. Not only did I find that the UK and the US is different, the depth of that difference is much larger than you think. Okay, so in terms of my accessibility for my experience, most of the places I've gone to, they actually genuinely wanted to help me out, and that was deeply appreciated, because even for a lot of them, this experience was new. I was actually I actually worked for 2 months as a volunteer at the Smithsonian Institute in one of their newest exhibits, and them and we had discussions. I'm like, okay, how can you make best use of my abilities? And they asked the same question, how can you best fit in here? Taking part in these activities, and through discussions, I realized that, okay, I can help engage the students in some learning tasks and whatnot, and I can help with different areas. I did everything from counting people who came in to hosting exhibits to actually being one of the junior sort of guides in one of the more exclusive exhibits. And this was one of my best experiences, because here's where I realized that I actually like engaging with people, with different type of people. I really enjoy it, because it helps me develop my communication skills so much more, and it helps me fine tune it. This is something that you get with much more practice. And we had an international crowd, and we actually we actually help engage this international crowd in many different ways. Even me, with my visual impairment, help engage this international crowd in many ways. Okay, let me give an example. There's one activity where we had to show them different type of rocks. Now the chart that spells out what these different rocks are, like quartz and like is it fool's gold, pyrite, I think it's called, and a few other. Um, the print is too small, so I used to engage them. I was like, okay, you'll have to help me teach you. Okay, the rock that I'm holding, what does it look like? So so in that way, I'm engaging the person, even though if the person is a little bored, they will still have to actively engage with me. And okay, maybe not that motivated, but that experience on another level. Yes, I'm giving you this for free. On another level, that experience and the relevant information intended to be taught is embedded in that experience. So, in one way or another, that information is going into the learner's head. Okay, so I use techniques such as these because, like, when you're disabled, you're visually impaired. Here's one thing I realized: the worst thing you can do is do nothing. Like, you have to try if you have an objective, and if it's doable for you even in some way. You have, first of all, you have to think about it and see if it's doable. And if it seems doable, like, try a few things. Like, obviously don't take stupid risks, but if they're like, relatively hazard free, try a few things. So I worked in a section where I worked with rocks. I worked in a section where I worked with shark teeth, like great white shark teeth, megalodon teeth. And by the way, yeah, a megalodon tooth is round about this big. Yeah, round about this big. Okay, so like and we had like bricks of Chinese tea and whatnot. So yeah, I had one negative experience where I went into this one of this nationwide chain, like nationwide stores. Like, no, not the nationwide bank. No, a chain store that has nationwide outlets. Okay, and I wanted to buy one item, and this was like in Tyson's Corner. This is a store in Tyson's Corner. Um, After making me stand there for half an hour in the customer service section, a person comes out and say, "I'm sorry, we can't help you. You have to find your own assistant." I said, "I need help finding one item. Help me find the one item and take me to the cashier. That's all you need to do." They said, "No, sorry, we can't help you." And I'm thinking, you know what? This is the age of where people like record stuff on their phone. Where's that camera when you need one? Like, and I was kind of opposed to them. Like, nah, you don't need to make drama for this. But you know what? That needed to be told. Okay, apart from that, the George Washington University, really, tried. And this is nowhere better explained than the US State Department actually doing a small documentary on me. Yes, it features me and how the accessibility framework helps people like me, like navigate, study, and basically perform day-to-day features. Okay, and I'm gonna post a link to that in the descriptions below, in the description section below. This is on the 25th anniversary of the ADA. Okay, now keep in mind, I was still under the impression that okay, that may be a little different, but generally the UK and the US, even the accessibility approach is the same and whatnot. And my focus was on becoming essentially a science teacher, was in science education. It wasn't what it is right now, like, since 2019, like a focus on on improving accessibility. And yes, that, like, in case if it missed anyone, that's my research. I'm trying to improve accessibility, making science education more accessible to people with low vision. Okay. That time my focus and my drive was completely different. Okay, so what many people don't know is that I actually got called for a further discussion. In a, let's just put it this way, in a very important office on C Street, Northwest, or, like, near C Street North, near or on C Street Northwest. Okay, like, it's one of those places where, like, even if you go suited up, you have to wear an expensive suit. Okay, like, otherwise a cheap suit is like, it's just gonna be like, okay, he just rented a blazer. Okay, no, I and now in hindsight, I'm thinking, oh my God. Now in hindsight, when I think about how, sorry to say this, but how weak and how inefficient the existing approach to visual impairment services is in the United States, I'm like, I was right there. Only if this version of me, only if this version of me went there, I would have told them exactly how to improve, exactly how to change, and exactly where are the flaws and how to ameliorate upon the flaws. I was right there. But it's just it happened at a very bad time. I was not ready. I did not have, like, it's no one's fault. It's absolutely no one's fault, because back in 2015, I had no idea I'm going to be here right now doing a PhD in science education, trying to improve accessibility for those with visual impairments in science education. I had no idea I was going to go down this route. So my focus was not there. My focus was on educational psychology and whatnot, and, like, teach more specifically pedagogical methods. Okay, but overall, that's pretty much, my experience of the George Washington University in a nutshell. Like, I ended in 2015 and I graduated in 2000, and my ceremony was in 2016. And after that, like, after getting my second master's, I'm like, okay, like, still can find work. So what to do? There's only one, like, I have one more degree left in me, because when I came to the United States, I said, okay, this is going to be my final degree. But by the end, I realized that I had a lot more to offer. And this is one thing. Like, I applied for a PhD, and, the Florida Institute of Technology. By that time, my bro also got here as well. So he said, apply for Florida Tech. Okay, yeah, why not? Okay, so I applied to Florida Tech, and, like, I got in. My professor said something to me that, like, I really do not want to, like, and, like, there is a serious threat right now that this might not come to fruition. I might not end up with a PhD after all, because, like, circumstances, COVID-19, finances, and whatnot. But yeah, I said that I thought I wasn't good enough for a PhD. My professor said, like, that's funny, because after the first few days I saw you, I instantly thought you had PhD written all over you. I'm like, you know what? Thank you. I'm like, thank you for that, for having that much confidence. Thank you for having that much belief in me. And I was thought, like, I never had someone put it to me in that way. Not that, like, you have to succeed. You can succeed because you have to succeed. Like, a lot of times it was presented to me that way. Like, you like, you have to finish this course because there's no other way. Okay. But this was the first time I had someone say like, you you can you can achieve this goal because you have extreme ability to achieve this goal, and don't think you don't have the ability to achieve this goal. Instead of you have to achieve this goal, because if you don't achieve this goal, there's going to be a lot of evil consequences. That different approach, that different approach, it it added more rocket fuel to the fire I had in my belly. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do this. And right now, I'm in a position. I'm like, you know what? If I don't end up getting a PhD, it's not due to the lack of my ability. No, it's due to the lack of the system. It's due to deficiencies in the system. All right. So that brings to a close my thoughts on the George Washington University experience. If I ever get a chance and if I ever get the finances, like good enough finances, I do intend to go back there. If I have the opportunity, and like, if the pay is good and whatnot, because you know what, it was still somewhat of a vibrant city. I mean, that time was the triumph of the time of Obama, so it wasn't that politically agitated at that time. In fact, one incident that I remember is, oh yes, I forgot to mention this one thing. The George Washington University, Washington D.C., is the first time I actually considered, you know what, I might as well use the blind cane, because up until then I was vehemently against using the blind cane. At that point, I started to think, you know what, it's about time that I use the blind cane so that, like, I become, and this is something that happened to me in America. Oh my God, this happened to me in America. I mean, and please, if you take nothing else away from this long, boring video, take this away. Take this away. You have to be more practical than an ideologue, than an idealist. More practicality, less idealism. I'm not saying no idealism. You can be idealistic, but you have to be a bit more practical than you are idealistic. That's why I thought, you know what? What are the practical uses of a blind cane? I gave it a chance, and believe me, it I won't say changed my life, it improved my life. Because now I can move around with a bit more confidence. Yeah, I'm still maybe getting a bit too dependent on the blind cane, but it's not like if there is no blind cane I can't operate, because I've operated most of my life without a blind cane. It's just it becomes a little more difficult, because the primary purpose of a blind cane, that what I realize, is not for me to know that I'm visually impaired, because I know I'm visually impaired. It's for other people to know that I'm visually impaired, so that we can get the best outcome based on what I'm trying to achieve. Yeah, I'm still opposed to a dog, because for me, a dog is an added liability. Okay, and even along these lines, like, I started to learn Braille as well. Yes, I got, the first time I came across a digital talking book player, I had no idea there was a separate device that is specifically made for reading digital talking books. Which has a supreme battery span, man. I mean, oh my God, the battery life is amazing. But yeah, I still stand by my stance on Braille. Okay, and if you want to know my stance on Braille, like like you'll have to wait for my research and the current inefficient approach to visual impairment. I still stand by it because those are completely with proofs. But okay, the cane is more of a practical approach. Like I said, it has more practical implications because in the UK, this is one thing I realized in the UK, many people who had vision like me or slightly better than me, they tended not to use the blind cane. And when I come here to the US, it's actually a little different. Like, yeah, in the US, I did not meet as many visually impaired people, and most of them I met, they were they were much older than me. So I did not meet the youth really. But yes, more practical, less of an idealist. There should be a healthy balance. All right. So guys, let me know what you thought about this in the comment section below. If you have any questions, please post them down as well, and I will answer them as soon as I can. Worth I'm looking forward to reading your comments. And please hit that like, subscribe button. I use that as motivations to make more videos.